So for today on Out the Box, I'm very excited about this one. I'll be unpacking Rize of the Underdog, which was another request. So thank you so much for that very awesome request. Now, just to give you a bit of a backstory, this one, it starts back in 2006, all right? So I was invited to Finland, Helsinki, to go and be a part of a culture exchange program. So a few South African acts, but it was more sort of traditional acts. I think there were one or two vocalists there as well, and I was invited to represent the hip-hop / rap kind of a culture, you know. So what this entailed was we had to go to schools in Helsinki, Finland, to go and talk about what the rap culture was like in South Africa. It was still sort of coming up back in those days. Remember, we're talking about 2004, 5, 6, 7. So it was definitely developing, you know, not at the level where it is today, but there was plenty to talk about, you know. So I went to schools to go and talk about what we're doing in South Africa and how we are interpreting this hip-hop culture and what makes us unique, you know, from everyone, and what's our story. And so I also got to meet up with young music students, and I had to bring some of my music. You know, they had to practice it, rehearse it, and then we went about to do some shows. So I did a couple of shows at a school, and then I did some other shows at a cafe as well, and then it all culminated into this one big concert that we did, where, you know, dignitaries were invited as well. You know, the embassy, the South African embassy, also had some major guests. They were there as well, and I got to be a part of that. Now, in my visit in Helsinki, I also got to meet a rapper who I was a big fan of back then. He goes by the name of Red Drama. I remember we used to play a single of his on YFM, and so when I found out then already that he was from Finland. And so when I was in Finland, the team that was hosting me, Marjuten folk, mentioned that, you know, they'd be able to access this guy. So I got to meet Red Drama, and we obviously, you know, became friends. And he gave me a CD of beats, and I'll tell you where this connects. But before I do, let me also mention I met another guy called Paleface, who hosts a radio show out in Helsinki, Finland, and he also happens to be an MC. Now, these two guys I also got to perform with. They made a cameo appearance on my big performance when we performed on the final night. Now, let's come to the beats that I got from Red Drama, right? So when I obviously came back to SA in 2006, Landmynz had dropped their first mixtape already, right? I think it was called Periga Minas Volume 1. Listen, it was a dope mixtape, punchline infested. I've always been a fan of Landmynz, and so when there was talk of doing a second one, and I had been asked to jump in on that one, you can understand, man, I took to the opportunity, but also this was an opportunity to really flex now, you know, and I'm talking about just bars, punchlines. There was no real concept to the song. Maybe the hook gave it a little bit of a concept. The hook was Rize of the Underdog. In fact, I have it here in my book. Let me refer to it. So what gave it a concept was the hook, which says, Rize of the underdog, with all the trials that we undergone, it's no surprise that we want to war. Rize of the underdog, all you getting is lightning and thunderbolt, striking 100 volts. Rize of the underdog, it's fighting in somersaults. Some will survive and some will fall, but we never die, we multiply in 100-fold. It's a rise of the underdog. Now remember, this being a mixtape means they were going to get contributions from everybody. So the verses really needed to stick out. You know what I mean? And if the first volume was anything to go by, I remember absolutely just wanting to punch this thing. And another quick backstory, at the time, my manager was a guy called Baxter, who I met at Outrageous Records, right? So Baxter, my dude, I remember us driving to Oots' studio. We recorded this with the Oots, and I hadn't even finished it, you know, but the studio session had already been booked. So Bexteezy was driving. I think it was my Toyota Taz, but that's a whole other story. Bexteezy was driving so that I could finish this thing, you know. And I remember I think I only had 1 verse and a half, so I wrote the second, I completed the second verse and the third verse on the way to studio to go and bust this thing. So the first verse goes like this, right? First of all, my bad. If you don't understand my mistake, I have a tendency to just bang rhymes at quick rates, strong language. You'd swear my rap lines lift weights like Snaz I dictate on the Landmynz Mixtape, because Snaz the dictator, you see. And then remember, at this time I had left Rage, right? I was in talks with the Creative Kingdom. I eventually signed with Gallo Records, but the next line refers to that when I go, it's no wonder I left Rage, because I got the hunger to the ribcage, a spit lightning and thunder on the mixtape. So deep, my performance is under a big stage. Writing another book, I'm on the 106th page. So you can never question, dude. I'm so obsessed with truth, I recorded the rest of this tune in a confession booth. With my right hand on the Bible and the mic connected to the pulpit, so the full script is blessing you. So many flows, I leave the mic with water spots. Write metaphors a lot, and it's quite unorthodox. Hey, the rhyme schemes over there, with more horsepower than a right Porsche got. Me and Landmynz, we click like that Corsa talk. Right? Come on, Fundin! Obviously that one is obvious because Corsa has a lot of clicks in it. You know what I mean? And then the second verse also, you know, more than the punchlines, I think it was also just the rhyme schemes. At this stage, I was I think through with my second album, so I had really been refining the rhyme patterns because I really took a lot of pride in the writing with that. So I'm back with a vengeance to put your reserves back on the benches, to make your fools stop like the back of a sentence. Full stop. I'm like a bouncer at the entrance, stopping your whack contenders. Donald Trump with his rap apprentice. Because obviously Donald Trump was the main guy in The Apprentice, and you know, he was very big on saying you're fired. So the line refers to telling MCs they're fired, you know. My heart is genuine. It all starts with a penguin. It moves you or ends up in a line that moves like March of the Penguins. Around about the time there was an animated movie called March of the Penguins, and they were known for moving in a line, you know what I mean? So lines that move you like March of the Penguins. You can't see me like Ray Charles, not to offend him. I'm a landmine sergeant, I camouflage and I blend in. So Landmynz, their whole theme was all about army and war and all that, you know. So that's kind of where that's referring to. I'm a camouflage, I'm a landmine sergeant, I camouflage and I blend in to start the engine. I'm like a big Jeep car, a 4x4. That's how you get your 16 bar. Mathematical one there. Victory's ours, die rises quickly, y'all. The day the ProVerb made mixtape history, dog. My rhymes are sold the bomb and my hook is the best. And suicide bombers are strapping my book to their chest. So in other words, if my rhymes are the bomb, and a suicide bomber would then have to strap my book so that he can go and detonate. That's a very figurative punchline, you know. And I even say, or bury the book, it's a landmine, it's blowing them up, still referring to the rhymes being the bomb. Then the third verse, this I definitely remember writing in the car on the way to the studio. It says, a lot of cats are liars on tracks, they claim they sell, they hire in plaques. Me, I'm candle, that's fire on wax. You barely move me like tires on flat. See, I'm dope, 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 like a whole choir on crack. Come on! That one doesn't even need to be broken down. City of Kimberly, where I was born, raised and grown, zoned my skill. And now my forte is poems driving you crazy, like I'm in road rage mode, because I got more grammar than an old age home. So that's a little bit of a low-hanging fruit as far as punchlines go. In other words, it's not necessarily, you know, you don't have to apply yourself to kind of reach a punchline like that, because the play on grammar versus grandma at an old age home. So I got more grammar than an old age home. You know what I mean? But if you consider when this was written, man, you know, it was still ahead of its time. You don't know the half of it. Like, I started rapping it backstage, tossing punchlines in the air so y'all can catch phrase. Come on, right? And whenever we're tracks laced, I approach a beat like it was makeup on a hag's face. I start with a fat bass. You know, makeup artists would connect with this one because when you apply makeup, you generally start with a bass. So I'm talking about, you know, connecting that with like making music. You usually start with a fat bass, right? Now, this last 4 bar is for me one of my absolute favorites, and I hope you appreciate it as well, only because of how it ends up shutting down, how it ends up giving respects to Landmynz for putting me on as well. But it also questions, you know, my feeling at the time about, you know, the struggle of hip-hop. I was of the opinion that all the solid, incredible MCs were not getting the love and respect that they deserve, and the more commercial guys were getting the love. You know, I don't have any issues with any of that now, but it was obviously something I felt very strongly about back then, because I say, why is it the cats with the whack lines get mad shine, while cats that can actually rhyme don't get half a dime? Cats like ProVerb and Landmynz, when we the pros are throwing verbs that will land on your minds. Oh! And that's how I shut it down, man. So once again, a big shout out to Landmynz. I don't know if they're active anymore, but I remember when that mixtape finally came out, that track, Rize of the Underdog, definitely stood out, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. So listen, if there are any more tracks you'd like me to unpack, do let me know, send your comments, and I will also put up the link for the Off the Books mixtape, where you can actually find the song Rize of the Underdog.